The corner, and we know we're coming to a close close with the NFL, with the Super Bowl. I'm excited for all of it. Monday, I had Brandon Finnegan on with us here on the program, talking a lot about the up-and-coming season, and joining us, former MLB pitcher Jay Jackson joins us here on the program. I asked this question on Monday because of the fact of next month is always the fun month because pitchers and catchers report start up, and that's when you know it's baseball season up from there. In your experience, in your tenure in the league, like what did that feeling look like for you when pitchers and catchers report came around and you were like, man, I am ready for the season to start?
It's probably the most exciting time of the year for me, honestly, when I was playing. That was probably the most favorite time because it was before the hitters got there, so you didn't have to worry about it. But also you got to be with all your boys and see who you're competing against and just see how much better everybody's gotten over the offseason. And you knew the season was about to start, so you knew it's almost true go time. So it was always the most fun, exciting time of the year for me.
So, kind of get in the nitty gritty. I started off the show with this. Now, right now, in the last couple of years, I mean, today is a heartbreaking day for a lot of people because the fact of Bill Belichick is not a first ballot Hall of Famer, which is crazy, but it's not to say he's not a Hall of Famer. He certainly is, but it just felt like today wasn't the day. But when I look at, because I had this straining type of tug of war when it came to the baseball writers, when it looked at the resume, the storyline, and what kind of person that you are, on everyday level when it came to the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. But this year, it's going to be a great class. The reason in which I felt this way was because of the year, and I have full respect for him. But Scott Rowland, when I looked at the lists of Andrew Jones, Billy Wagner, and a lot of these other guys who did build the resume, I was just questioning more of what was going through the minds of the baseball writers. And so I say this, there has to be a happy medium when it comes to coaches and the players with their year's eligibility. That's the number one thing. But I think this year's class, Carlos Beltran, Andrew Jones, Jeff Kent, I think this is a pretty good, decent class in my opinion.
No, it's definitely a great class. I mean, you look at some of the votes they've made over the years, the MLB Hall of Fame, just like, this year with Bill Belichick and the NFL Hall of Fame. This is probably the most shocking, interesting choice that I've ever seen on a Hall of Fame vote. I'm hoping that their reasoning behind it is that somebody's going to hire him to be a head coach again, and that's the only reason that they could have. Is because somebody's going to hire him to be a head coach, so he'll be re-eligible again. Because other than that, there's no reason Bill Belichick should not be in the Hall of Fame or a first ballot Hall of Famer. Everything you see about him is what a first ballot Hall of Famer is supposed to be about, right? So It's kind of that whole situation. But, with the MLB Hall of Fame committee, all the sports writers and things over the years, you kind of look at, Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, the whole steroid era that they claim – they're not putting these guys in, right? So do they do the same with Bill Belichick since they don't make him a first ballot Hall of Famer, even though he is a Hall of Famer? Right. If they're trying to keep it as a precedent with kind of what MLB's always done, because that's the only other thing you can do, right? So for me, all the guys I just named for the MLB, they should be in the Hall of Fame too for me. Like, they have to be. Like, you look at their resumes, same thing. Like Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, like those are the two main guys you're like, resume-wise, regardless of what, if you think that they help that much to have those type of numbers, then okay. But realistically, playing baseball at the highest level is already tough enough. To put up even half of those numbers and the guys are in the Hall of Fame, I think that definitely those guys deserve to be in there too. So that's my 2 cents on that. But it is what it is. You live, you learn, you go forward the next day. And the Hall of Fame class we have this year is fantastic. I grew up watching Andrew Jones. That was who I was an Atlanta Braves fan. I'm from Greenville, South Carolina. So we had the Greenville Braves. I watched him when he came up through the minor leagues. So I wanted to always be an outfielder until I was a pitcher and had to transition. So I'm ecstatic for this Hall of Fame class. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a lot of good speeches. There's been a lot of parties I've seen in different places for those guys celebrating them, and they should be celebrated. And I'm looking forward to seeing like you said, hopefully Scott Rowland gets in next, because if Jeff Kent's in, I feel like Scott Rowland's got to get in too.
Well, and I think about it this way is like, I think of guys like Jack Morris, who we know like back in the 80s when they were pitching in Detroit, he had such a great year. And then going into Minnesota, which really, contributed much. I just look at the guys that I know that put in the body of work that even regardless of it, they left an impact, because baseball is a classic. It's a historic, nostalgic sport, because we've seen so many greats. And we watched, the summer of '99. And it's like we watched the Bash brothers and you look at Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, and it was like we all knew what the state of baseball was in at this time. And it was like the viewership, the ratings, they weren't quite climbing higher until Chicks dig the long ball. And then guys were just getting offensively aggressive and competitive. And then even pitching, for another thing, was also one of those things you just loved to watch. So,
100%. And like you see it, like all those guys, Mark McGwire included, Jose Canseco, all those guys, a lot of those pitchers from the era are suffering from it now, where they're not in the Hall of Fame, even though their resume stacked up to some of the guys that are in the Hall of Fame says that they deserve to be in there, right? So it's kind of a give and take. And hopefully Bill Belichick definitely doesn't have to go through this. And hopefully it's not that much of whoever the voters were that didn't, since they haven't come out and said who they were yet. Hopefully it's not that they have this much bias against him where it holds him out for even another year, honestly, because this makes no sense. But baseball wise, like hopefully, like I said, next year, I think Scott Rowland should be in. If Jeff Kent's setting the precedent, I think Scott Rowland's got to get in next year and see what the class is looking like for next year as well.
Yeah. So, I was asking, so I've already asked two former major leaguers, Logan Morrison and Brandon Finnegan, this question.
My guys.
And yeah, they're the best.
Yeah, I played against them. I was teammates with both of them. Funny enough.
Wow, how about that? Oh, yeah, man, that's the best.
Yeah. So it's kind of a funny situation.
So the reason I asked this question because we know of right now the recent outrage. How are the Dodgers getting away with this, with these contracts and all the rest of it, right? And I looked at the Kyle Tucker contract from top to bottom, everything that was broken down. Jay, half the league could have made this deal, but yet, people like it's like they are outraged. The Dodgers made this deal when it was 4 years, $240 million, when your former club, Toronto, offered him $350 million. And then the Phillies, they tried to land a long-term contract with Bo Bichette, and then he goes to New York. So it's like, to me, this is so doable in this league that a lot of it, if you're going to be outraged by an organization, what you should be outraged is the non-competitiveness from the ownerships, because it's like they got the money, they know exactly where to spend it, and they know that the Dodgers are manipulating the system because of the deferred comp money deal. And so anybody could honestly use this model and use this system. So when we talk about a salary cap, I'm on the opposing side. I think if you put in a salary cap, you're going to benefit more of the owners, when I should be harping at my owner to spend the money as it should. When you think about this outrage, what's your opinion on it and how can we better it? Because I think the Dodgers are showing us a system that works for other clubs, and other clubs, some of it kind of are utilizing it and some of them not so much. How can we find the even playing field from here so then nobody feels outraged like Pittsburgh, Washington, even here in Denver with the Colorado Rockies?
Well, I think it's also guys are wanting to go to these places too. It's the money involved, but also, like you said, it's the owners. But you should be mad at the owners too, that they want a salary cap, but also that they're not spending the money. Like you said, all these contracts are very doable for every organization. Yeah. Or at least I would say 60 to 70% of them. It's just a matter of what the organizations are looking for. You can just tell by kind of who they hire, who are the systems, who they hire as the major league like head coach and managers and the pitching coaches and stuff like that. You can see kind of where baseball is shifting for those owners, where the Dodgers are getting all the best baseball players because not only are they going there to play in LA, so they're making their money. LA's already making their money back on all of it anyway. But right. Two, they're going there. They know they're going to win. And three, like they're getting all the stuff like the marketing and everything else. And they're playing with a bunch of guys that know that how to play baseball. They're not just worried about analytics. They're using the analytics with the foundational part of baseball and putting guys who know baseball around them as well. And it's not just, hey, we're going to go just straight analytics based. We're using former players that know the grind of the game through these 162 games as well. And I feel like we're having a shift back. Like I went to the coaches convention not too long ago, and a lot of people I talked to said the game's going to hopefully shift back to hopefully a balance where you're getting more guys that used to play the game into the game, where they're helping with the guys that are analytics based to make the game better. Because you look at the game back in the 90s and 2000s and the numbers guys were putting up with guys batting 300 or 270 at least, 330, all these numbers and stuff with the home runs and the RBIs, but also playing very good baseball at the same time, where you saw a lot of 3-2 games, but you saw a lot of homers still and all this other stuff, but there's so much fundamentally sound baseball, where now it's shifted, I feel like so much to analytics, where all you see is guys trying to make highlights, which is like hitting home runs or striking guys out, which is, they're all fun and games, but you see the games start being very boring except for those little things, because, you know, how long does it take for a guy to hit a home run every time? You know what I mean? It's not like guys are hitting home runs every at bat. It still takes like probably 4 to 7 at bats for a guy to hit a home run. So there's still a lot of things that could be happening in that time that could be interesting and great baseball as well. Like, you know, bunt situations, stolen bases, even though they're trying to put more stolen bases in the game, I think there's a way to do that too, which I feel like everything's shifting away from the pitchers, honestly, with how we're just doing things, how we're using the pitch clock and things of that nature. I don't think we should have a pitch clock that's still pretty short, because you can never, I told the guys all the time, you can't ever mimic that type of motion or that type of speed of a game or anything. Like, there's nothing like throwing and pitching a baseball in a clutch situation and then literally having to go back up there and do it again in 15 seconds. Like,
yeah, that's a good point.
You're gonna hurt yourself. Like, honestly, like, it's crazy.
100%.
Really so
yeah,
it's just, I feel like ultimately with the salary cap too, that's where there's going to be, I think there's going to be another lockout, because that's going to be the key issue. And fans honestly should be worried about their owners wanting to make these teams better and go spend and get these guys so they can build the better cultures and better teams and have those veterans that do cost this much money and be more appealing to these guys to come, instead of just being like, hey, we're not even going to be in the race to even sign this guy. Like, the top of the market always knows there's like probably 5 to 6 teams that they're going to be able to choose from. And it's crazy to even think about that, but anybody could do it. It's just making your team appealing and building a culture there that people and free agents want to come to.
And it's funny because, you know, living here in Colorado, I mean, I know how the Montforts pretty much work, but, you know, to me, it's like you were just in the postseason multiple times, you know, in the last span of years, and you're in the NL West with the Dodgers, the Padres, the Giants. You can make it happen, but it's like when I hear this owner reminisce about glory old baseball in Coors Field, you know, it's 70 degrees and the sun sets here in Colorado. I'm like, yeah, it's great and all, but when are we going to get competitive? That's the only thing I'm like, that's what you're missing. But no, these are great points. And, you know, hopefully they'll figure this out, because I don't see this be an NBA situation. NBA is a different beast, because they're having more of a G League and a international cesspool problem, because a lot of our domestic stars, now it might get better because of college hoops with the NIL and all the rest of it, that we can find the balance that just like the NFL and college football do. So they'll eventually get there, but I don't think baseball is going to get to that point of what the NBA is dealing with. So I watched this team in the World Series in the past year, and a former club of yours who played. Toronto, they were scrappy. The fact that they led the league in hits, and now they're dealing without Bo Bichette, which can be a little bit trickle with their lineup. But they have their star. They paid him warmly, which as they should have. And now you're building these guys through the systems, and you're also building them through free agency. And I know it took them to Game 7, with how exciting that it was for them to not come away with another championship on their belts. But you got to think, they play competitive. They're close to the tier. And you got Seattle that's cooking. You got a couple of other teams in the American League. how do you kind of outlook the Blue Jays going into 26 on their minds, knowing we got only game 7 in this position, but now we need to take it further to maybe potentially get back into the big dance?
I think, honestly, they had so many chances to win it, right?
Yeah.
Realistically, for me, they had a lot of chances to win it, but I've said it in the interviews I've had and the podcasts I've been on since the World Series. I've said, that's just the difference of the Dodgers versus the Blue Jays in that situation, where those guys in the Dodgers have been in those situations so many times that they took advantage of the little mistakes that the Blue Jays made in big situations, right? So that's kind of what happened. But losing Bo, I kind of called that after they signed and gave all that money to Cease, that it was kind of, you could have probably managed that a little bit better. I think Bo should have been the Blue Jays' first concern in that, because Bo's a heartbeat of that team too. And you're losing Springer eventually, because Springer's just getting older. He's going to retire. You might lose guys. You might lose some of these guys that were still part of the core that's been there to get you to game 7. So if you don't get these guys back and you lose Bo, that's a tough situation. But I feel like that's just how the ball's rolling right now. Guys are taking shorter deals to kind of bet on themselves and gamble on themselves, and teams are throwing money at them. I think knowing that the CBA is about to happen, so guys are trying to get as much as they can before it too. But they're gambling on themselves to get another big payday after that. And even if you don't, you've already had your one big payday, so you can go in and the market's set for you at that point. You're not going to take so much drastically less, because you're never going to play hopefully that bad where you have to take drastically less to do that. But I think for the Blue Jays, they're going to be a scrappy team again. But I think that losing Bo hurts like so much. People don't understand. I was in that locker room. I saw Bo, even though people don't give Bo credit for like him being a vocal leader and things like that. Bo still led in a lot of different ways, and a lot of guys saw that. And losing Bo, I think it's going to have a ripple effect. I think they'll be fine ultimately. I think the pitching that they are gaining from it will help, but I just think that losing Bo in the AL East, which is for me one of the top 2 divisions in all of baseball, so losing him is going to be hard to really patch up, but I think they'll still be fine going forward. I don't know how much of a loss is going to ultimately be. Hopefully not a huge loss. Hopefully they do get another chance at a crack at a championship again, but I think losing Bo, that's huge for me. And that's just because I know who Bo is, and I love Bo to death. And I'm glad he did get paid. But him being in Toronto would have been ending, being his whole career with him and Vladdy and actually winning a championship there would have been. I feel like that would have been the ultimate thing they should have done. Absolutely.
So an interesting team, and I talked about this last year when the trade deadline happened, and just before it. But the San Francisco Giants, they get Rafael Devers. Now, I was saying this up and onto the record that I felt like this was a little bit of a reality check, in my opinion, when it came to Devers from this point of view, because Boston made it into the postseason. They had Roman Anthony, they had Jarren Duran, they had a lot of these youngsters. So they felt like we can still compete with these guys without him. And I felt like when he first got to San Francisco and jabs were thrown, I was like, yeah, Boston's not going to take that. They're going to want to get into the postseason and prove something to just give it more fuel of motivation. Now, the Giants are an interesting team. I mean, they ended up in 3rd place in the NL West. Now they are at least at 500. And I feel like they needed to fix up a bit of the consistency in the lineup. Now, you got Jung Ho Lee, you got Matt Chapman, and Willie Adames. But I think they've got enough of the firepower that they need. But now it's just being consistent all throughout 162 games a year. But, playing in this organization, you kind of think of it starting pitching. They've got a couple guys that they have already solidified. They could add a little bit more. But then it's ultimately how the importance of the relief pen that's going to be a big factor for them moving down the stretch. How do you kind of see this with San Francisco as far as we got a power bat? We now need to find the consistency and get better with our pitching situation if we want to make it into that postseason punch for the wild card or above.
I think that's a great question, but I think same thing that you feel like they're gonna probably develop some of the guys that they have as starters in the organization as probably relief guys, which is what I'm thinking is gonna happen. And so therefore they're gonna build from the relief on the inside, and they might go add a piece here or there just to solidify that if they have a postseason opportunity. But I think, like you said, they have enough firepower on the offensive side and a core now that's going to be there for a while that they can build around and add to and develop through the system to, I mean, their top 10 prospects should be able to fill in and pipe through some of these holes that they might have on offense, on the offensive side, which you've seen it so far. They have. But it's, again, you're in the NL West, AL East, NL West. Like, you're in dogfights every day, and it's being consistent and who's going to last the longest. And just, I think they'll be fine. They'll add some pieces to that pitching staff. It's getting a relief core. They have their core starters, but they're going to find some more. It's just back end starters, back into the pen, really. You know, that's the name of the game when it comes down to September and October. It's who's got the best pen and who's got the best 4 or 5 guy. Because once you start getting to those long series, the 5-game, 7-game series, you know, you start relying on your 4 or 5 guys to either be in the pen to help you get some innings and give you quality innings and go through their lineups because of their ability to, or the back ends normally throw in multiple innings, right? Those are the guys that you're relying on. So I think they'll add some pieces, or they'll develop a couple guys through the system, which I'm pretty sure they probably have. I haven't checked in on their system in a while. I've actually been in the midst of, building my own kind of business that I applied for some coaching jobs, didn't hear back from any teams, which kind of weird in the first place. I don't think it's weird, but again, that's how baseball is right now. It's more analytical than, guys that have played. And I just got done playing, even though I did coach last year as well. But I feel like going through their organization, they're going to have some guys that are going to be on the cusp of either being great starters that are going to be 1 or 2s that they're going to slide into 4 or 5s at the beginning, or they're going to be able to slide some guys into that relief role that are going to be important guys at the, the September, October phases that are going to be able to give them multiple innings in the playoffs if they make it that far. But again, being in NL West, being in dogfights every day against the Padres, against the Dodgers, when the Rockies figure it out with the Rockies, you know what I mean? And then you have the Diamondbacks who were just in the World Series a couple of years ago, and they're on a march to get back there again because they know what it tastes like now. You're in a fight every day when you're playing against your division, and those games matter. You normally see 2 or 3 teams from the NL West in the playoffs every year. So you're going to have to face probably one of your rivals, I would say, probably in the divisional series or the championship series to go to the World Series every year. So you just try to piece it together as best you can, see what's available at the trade deadline, see what pieces you have. But I think they have the core that they need now. Buster's done a great job of piecing that team together, that they're not going to have much work to do, and they have time at this point. Like I said, that core is there for, I think, the next at least 6-7 years. So they're going to have some opportunities in the next 3 to 5 at least to either go to a World Series or be in a championship series in the next few years. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but I think they're on the way there. It's going to be interesting to see the way baseball rolls back or what they need to piece together to make that team better in the next few years.
Well said. So 2 final questions here for you. So I'm looking at one particular team that I feel like time is kind of against them in this point, because with the Dodgers regime right now, and, this team won a World Series in 2021, and they got a lot of question marks. First and foremost, Brian Snitker's out. They got a new manager. What do you think is the timeline? Because they suffered a bunch of injuries, and then the inconsistencies just got worse down the stretch. What's the timeline right now with Ronald Acuna and the Atlanta Braves? Because this team, they've got some really good players. And I understand, too, where no Dansby Swanson, you're trying to find that middle of the infield next to Ozzie Albies. But, I mean, you got the Phillies who are just constantly stacking up their lineups because they're on a timeline, too.
Yeah,
like, what could we really say about, the Braves? And what is something that's going to go through their minds depending on what the start of the season looks like, and then as they get closer into trade deadline, and then have to come to the harsh conversations down the stretch of what we need to figure out of the future?
I think the trade deadline is going to be a very big time in the 2026 Braves. Like, I think that's going to be a very big timeline for them, because it's going to be how do they play up until then, because they do have a couple key injuries that are supposed to last until May right now. So it's how do you plug those in? Who's coming back? Who's going to be healthy? Because kind of like where the Giants are getting to, the Braves did before. They had a solid core that was there for 6-7 years, or getting to the first couple of years of their 6-7 year span. They win some games, win some championships, and now they're on the back end. And people don't understand how much energy, physically, mentally, everything else it takes when you go to the playoffs every year. People don't understand, like, it's such a short time that you have of an off season every year. It's such a mental grind that you go through every year with that. And then you have to really get back into doing it again. And you just suffered such a huge defeat a lot of times in those situations, right? So with the Braves, their core is still there, and they still have, I think, how many years does Acuna have on his deal? I think it's 3.
I think about 3 years, yeah.
So they still have 2 or 3 years left with Acuna. They have years with, Strider. They have a couple years with Harris too. They have a couple years with a few guys, right? So their core is still going to be there a little bit. And their starting shortstop is now hurt until May. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens to them up until the trade deadline. Everybody gets healthy and they play good ball and they stay in the thick of it up until the trade deadline. It's going to be interesting to see what pieces they are missing to make that team get over the hump again, especially in NL East. But also, I think if they're at the back of the pack or they struggled a little bit or they've had some more injuries, I think I said it last year. I think this year they get rid of Acuna. You see what's out there or at least you test the waters to see what's out there for Acuna at the trade deadline, because then you can build around that again. You can get, at this point, if he's having another MVP type season again, you let him go, get a lot of pieces around him to build, to keep this core that you do have already for the next few years after Acuna is supposed to be leaving, to stack on top of those. And now you have an even deeper core than before, get some more starters, get a couple more outfielders, get a middle of the infield type bat that you can use that's going to be a shortstop that you can move around to either not center, but either right or left again. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. AA's smart over there, though. He's done such a great job, and people want to go play in Atlanta. People want to live in Atlanta. People love baseball in Atlanta. People love sports in Atlanta, right? And again, that's how you sell the culture, and for these ownerships to find people that are going to help sell these teams that fans should want owners to spend more money in. Okay, find a GM that's going to be able to sell, but also he's putting people around him that are going to see what's going to be best for these guys going forward, to make sure that they're getting the best of everything that they want, to make sure they do want to be there. You see a lot of times the people in places that don't spend a lot of money, people don't necessarily want to go play there either. And there's like a reason why. There's always a coincidental thing for some reason on those points, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, and Georgia, it's a great place wherever you are, up and in Atlanta or Athens or a lot of places, man. I mean, I've only gotten to as close as Atlanta's airport. That's about as close as I can get. But my brother lives up there. He says he loves it. It's open season, and that's the way you got to sell it. It's a beautiful spot. And yeah, I mean, I love what the Braves do, because they remind me so much of the way baseball is played, the way it should usually be played. So it'll be interesting. This 26th season is going to be a lot of fun, though. But World Baseball Classic, then the 26th season. I love every bit of this. Sports in 2026 is going to be immaculate, and I'm all for it. We're all geared up. Jay, appreciate you for coming on by, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. We'll definitely see you soon, especially with spring training around the corner. All hopes that you get up and into a coaching job, man, especially for pitching coaching. It's a lot of these pitchers with development and consistency, it's important, and I'd love to see what these new bloods and new generation of pitchers that we can find here in the Major League Baseball League as well. Take care, my friend. Appreciate you, man.
100%. Thanks, Jake. It's much appreciated to be on here again. Like I said, anytime you need me, I'll always be around, man.
Absolutely, man. You bet. All right. Well, we're shifting around the corner, heading up over into